Welcome to the Drink Like a Lady podcast, where we pledge to get you a seat at the bar and a seat in the boardroom. My guest today is Carol Sankar, who is the founder of the Confidence Factor for Women in Leadership. Carol, you and I were having a robust discussion about our shared background. You're from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm from Pennsylvania, but we are both Indian, or at least have pieces of Indian in us. And I actually want to start the conversation there because I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't say that our backgrounds feed into our confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So thank you for having me. And I do think our backgrounds, especially in the cultural context, really does feed into our confidence because it takes a lot to, at some point, admit to yourself that you're going to be asked questions that make you either uncomfortable or be asked questions that are going to make you go to a very scared place, especially when you're dealing with the workplace. You know, people expect, are you Black? Are you white? You're a woman? Are you man? Are you tall? Are you short? And then when you have these other stories behind your name and behind, your hair and there's a journey behind all of this. And then people expect an expectation. You have to learn how to be confident enough to answer it in a way that makes you feel comfortable, and also comfortable enough to be able to say that when I answer this, that is the last answer I'm going to give you. I give you everything you need to know. So you're from Pennsylvania. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and that's it. There's no more, kind of feeding into it. And I think that as women, especially those of us who are either first generation or immigrants ourselves, we have to be okay with the fact that this is what we are. And it took me a long time, 40 some odd years of healing work, to really be able to answer people in a way that makes me put that boundary around myself and say, this is the only answer you're going to ever get out of me. And all the other stuff that you're looking for, it's only available upon my comfort level. Even access to my children, access to those are only if I feel comfortable. I don't need to be able to justify. But as far as the country that I'm from, I'm proud to say that I am from that country because there are not many of us other than Nicki Minaj and a few. But at the same time, I can stop it there and be like, that's all I could give you.
Yes. And for those of you that are just tuning into our conversation, Carol and I were backstage talking about the common question that we often get, which is, where are you from? Which is a loaded question because, by saying that you're from Pennsylvania, which is what I used to say in the early days, doesn't really suffice.
It still doesn't.
Let's talk about the confidence factor. What is the confidence factor? And I'm so curious to learn more because I run a women's leadership platform, and confidence is just one of the things that I teach, but it's not the only thing.
So I started the Confidence Factor by accident somewhere around 2015. So in my background, true to be spoken, I am a dropout lawyer who made this decision. I was going to be the next Johnny Cochran's ex-wife. I had planned it out very methodically after the OJ trial. I said, I'm going to law school. I am going to be in that field. And then around the last year of law school, I kind of knew that there was no way in the world I was going to ever make this. I just couldn't explain it. Trying to be a high profile lawyer in New York City in the 90s was very different than being a woman attorney these days. There were very few women partners, very few women of color, very few immigrant women, especially in the firms that I was trying to get into. So because you have to do your apprenticeship so early, I started to see the writing on the wall that I was not going to be able to make it. Plus, it's a really tough industry if you don't have the support and the mentorship and the guidance. And in those days, there were none. So I made a very hard U-turn, and I made it back before I lost all my confidence, and I went into business, and that subsequently led me into real estate. So I'm a real estate developer and investor by trade. That's what I do 24 hours a day. However, when I got into this industry, I started to feel very lonely. Imagine going to venture capital meetings, and imagine going to development meetings, and you are the only one. And you could pick a list of things that you're the only one. You're the youngest one because the average real estate developer is 74. Start there. You're being called honey and babe in the room. You're not expected to be there. You're the only woman in the room. You're the only person of color in the room. So there's a lot of only one. So you feel alienated. And I had to find a way to kind of journal my my shock about leaving an industry that I thought, I was like, there are no women in law, so I'm going to make a U-turn. And then I go into this other high profile career that I happen to love. and there are also no women. So that's how I started the Confidence Factor, trying to figure out where's that gap between very high leadership positions and why women weren't there. And as I started having conversations with a lot of women who were interested in the industry but weren't in it, they all said something very common. I'm scared. What if I can't? I don't. And starting to express their fears in a very transparent way. And that led me to start something called the Confidence Factor. And I did not know that it was going to become this discussion. I didn't know it was going to become a book. But at the time, I just wanted to support women in a way to be able to pursue their dreams, because we have enough receptionists now. We need leaders. So I just wanted to be able to take women behind the desk of being complacent to being uncomfortable. And that was where I created the Confidence Factor.
And, you know, I think we forget that it's only been, 40 plus years that
Yes.
women have been in the workplace past the Mad Men era,
Yes.
right? Where our likability for the longest time was our only arrow in our quiver. And so much of being an advocate for yourself, which is something we're going to talk about, or saying no, dings that likability, which is why we don't show up confidently.
Yes. I think we're too worried. And I wrote in my book, I wrote a whole chapter about like versus respect. A lot of times we are very afraid of being respected. We want to be liked. And you're so correct. My mother used to tell me when she first came to this country, it was very important, because my mother is a retired Wall Street executive herself. And she said back in the 80s and the 70s, when she first came to the States, it was very hard to get up the ranks of leadership if you weren't liked, where men could be qualified and not liked and get to the same position. So it's almost like you had to kiss somebody's tail in order for you to get to a certain position. And so we're still, imagine our mothers are still telling us that subliminally, make sure such and such likes you. Even if you're just going out to a bar to have a drink, make sure they like you. Make sure you have a smiling face. Make sure you have a pleasing shirt. So we're always conditioned to be liked. And then when it's time for respect, we don't know how to turn that card fast enough. And so it's really important that we know the difference between like versus respect. And so we don't always compromise who we are to get ahead.
For those of you that are just joining me, I'm in conversation with Carol Sankar today about confidence in women leaders and why we don't have it. We are going to be taking questions, so I'd love for you to start putting them in the comment section as Carol and I run through her 6 points. So point number 1 is why confidence continues to hinder women leaders, which is a little bit counterintuitive.
Because the thing is, I think we have a wrong idea and a construct around what confidence is. I think we still have this idea that confidence is arrogance, and it's not. It's about the way you present yourself, the way you present yourself as a package. I think we still continue to think that if I'm confident, that means I'm going to be shrew, I'm going to be rude, I'm going to be nasty, I'm going to be a little bit bitter. We have this The Devil Wears Prada mindset, the movie, instead of thinking about what you are bringing to the table. I think why confidence hinders more women leaders is because we're not thinking about what we essentially have to bring to the table. We are worried about how people will perceive us if we overdo it by bringing what we have to the table. So the solution to that is to always consistently be in a position of remembering to yourself and reminding yourself and reminding others how important you are to whatever table you're getting ready to sit at. You have to consistently do that. One of the things that I had learned in Law from America that it still leads me to this very day. I used to be in rooms with lawyers who were well in their 80s that were still discussing the wins they had in their 20s. We stopped discussing our wins we had yesterday because we are worried that somebody would think that it's arrogance tomorrow. And I would be sitting there and these guys would be like, in 1938, when I won that case, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's prehistoric, but it's okay because a win is a win, right? And if you won, you won. But we tend to think of our wins as time sensitive. So how confidence hinders women, we simply don't put ourselves in a position to remind ourselves how valuable we really are and what we bring to the table as a construct to be invaluable at the table that we want to sit at.
Carol, I was speaking at a law firm last Tuesday. It was all in-house counsel and litigators that were in the room. And someone asked me the question, well, how much of your authentic self should you bring to the workplace? Now, I've been a television anchor in New York City, and I remember a general manager telling me at my first on-air station that just be yourself, Joya. Stop trying to be what you think a news anchor should be. And I've had great success from that. But I understood the lens from which this woman was telling me or asking me this question, because I bet law firms probably are not that kind to women bringing their authentic self. So where does that fit into the confidence equation?
I think we have to bring as much of our authentic self that we can afford to bring. So once upon a time in law firm America, once I got a little too common and brought a little bit too much of myself to work. One day, my grandmother made some curry chicken, a little aloo, a little chana, and I brought that to work. And because I wanted lunch, look, I'm a girl who likes to eat. And I was told very abruptly that the smell was too pungent. I thought you told me to bring my authentic self to work. This is what I do. I'm a foodie, and when my grandmother cooks, I eat. But I realized that I had not introduced the idea that this is who I am in front of this is what I eat. And what I'm saying is, although some people will be like, well, it's just food. It's not. This is who I am. Did I bring my entire self to work that day? I did it the wrong way. What I should have done is introduce myself. And then this is who I am. I think we don't bring our full authenticity because we have a fear of judgment. So how much of us do we bring to work? We should bring as much as we are comfortable bringing, because confidence comes in stages. You got to practice it one iota at a time. Sometimes it's not about pushing yourself all 100% out there. Can you bring 50% today? Tomorrow, can you bring 60, 70? And until you get comfortable enough where people know exactly what they expect from you, I say bring as much as you can that makes you feel good, but do not redact yourself because you're afraid that what the judgment would be if you did that.
I love that, because I think about some of the biggest moments, pivotal moments, seminal moments in my life when the doors have flung open and opportunity has landed in my lap. It was when I was being my most authentic self.
Yes.
But you have to beta test. You have to kind of test once, a little bit at a time. The comments are coming in fast and furious today, Carol. So let's get through your points. The next one is how to remove the we and believe in the you.
So I have this thing, and it's like my little pet peeve, Joya. It's my little pet peeve. We tend to talk about the collective. We are the we people. What we talked about, what we did, where we went, how we enjoyed, how this team won. We do a lot of cheerleading because we are taught to be we people, meaning when we contribute to a team, when we contribute to a project, when we contribute to something, we talk about the entire win of us. You are to talk about your win within the we. We got to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks. And I know that sounds selfish, but we have to take responsibility and ownership of our own wins. So if you are an asset to a team, talk about your ability to make that team win. I did this, that's why this team won that. I contributed this, that's why. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself and alienating yourself from the group collective a little bit, because sometimes you could be part of a losing team, but you're the winner on a losing team, but you forgot to talk about why you won and what you contributed to that. A lot of our conversations are too generic around everybody else's experience. And because we do a lot of the everybody can't, everybody doesn't have, everybody shouldn't do, we've got to get out of that. What do you bring? Selfish, be a little bit selfish. What do you bring? Because the thing is, when it's time for evaluations in the workplace, they're evaluating you. They're not evaluating the team. The team's performance may have been one thing, but what was your performance and what was your contribution to the team? Believe in yourself. Believe in your ability to talk about yourself and communicate your value. And if you want to talk about how it directed the team's win, then go for it. But don't ever start a conversation with we.
I remember interviewing Fran Hauser, who is the author of the book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, and she was an executive Time Warner for a very long time. And she has a whole chapter dedicated to credit claiming. When you've expressed an idea in the hallways and then somebody else, a male colleague, takes credit for it. And she had some great scripts, but one of the ones that stands out, and this is germane to what you just shared, is put it in your signature line.
Yes.
I did this. At your next meeting with your boss, I loved that we adopted this idea. I wanted to share the time that I said blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And so you champion your own idea to the decision makers and the powers that be.
Yes, exactly.
The next point is the importance of advocacy and support. Amen is all I can say to this.
I don't think we do enough to realize that we can have champions in our corners. We try to do everything ourselves. And you cannot be successful in business or in your career without support. You need people in your corner. It doesn't have to be a man or a woman, it could be a little bit of everything, but make sure you're always in a position to receive support. How you receive great support and advocacy is you have to accept criticism. You
Mm.
have to be able to be vulnerable to criticism and not be defensive. The thing is, the best mentors in my life, the best people who advocate for me every single day, and I'm still growing. I've done multiples of millions of dollars worth of real estate deals and still growing. And I'm still learning, I'm still stretching. But the way I attract people to support me is I'm willing to accept harsh criticism. Sometimes I do some silly stuff that I don't realize it's just not working. And I need somebody who is 10 steps ahead of me, who has done this very thing, to say, that's not the way it goes. You have to do blank, blank, and blank. And now they'll be my support system because they see me doing the work. They're invested in my success because they see that I'm actually producing and performing. So the best way for you to get advocacy and support is so you're going in the right direction, or what you think is the right direction. Be vulnerable, because every critic is not criticizing you. They want to see you win. They will become your advocates. They will become your allies, your support system, and they will help you to learn how to be able to get that seat at the table, because we're missing out on the idea. We think that it's criticism. It's not. You need these things in order for you to grow. You need to hear the truth, and the truth sometimes it hurts, but it's worth it in the long run.
But Carol, I think women get stymied in that they don't even know how to take the first step. They don't even know how to ask for that constructive criticism. What's a script that you would give to the folks that are tuning in today on how to ask for that kind of criticism?
Perfect. You look for the person who's doing exactly what you want to do. I have this saying that I say everywhere around me and to my kids as well. Always find somebody who's sitting in a seat you want to sit in. That's the first part. Don't ever try to find the person who's sitting in a seat that's just as comfy as your seat. Find the person who's sitting in a seat that you want to sit in. And then you ask them quite blank, this is what I did. What would you have done differently? That's your first level of being able to be transparent, because your support now realizes that you see some flaws and some errors and some ways that you can grow, because they're in the seat that you want to sit in. And so they will give you honest feedback. Also, you also want to look for people who have nothing to lose by giving you that criticism. There are people in the workplace who have something to lose. Those are not the people you're going to seek advice from, because they're going to give you the advice to lose. Someone who has nothing to lose wants to see you win. So you have to look for someone who's not competing with you, but they will compliment you. Be very vulnerable at this moment. Ask for feedback, and they'll give you criticism. And that's how you'll know that you are in a position of accepting something that's going to help you have the ability to help you change.
Carol, I'm in front of women all week long. I do a lot of sales calls. I'm doing a lot of networking. It pains me that women do not trust themselves. I actually started my post today in the lead into your and my talk saying, women don't trust themselves. How do we get them there?
I think it's going to take a lot of time. I don't think it will be done in our lifetime. There's simply so many barriers to entry. We're still hearing our mothers and our grandmothers' voices in the workplace. We're still seeing, even last night, we had a whole night full of elections. We're still seeing women battle for seats that, why are we still doing that, right? So if you're looking at it from a different standpoint, you're looking at the women who lose, and you make a story that protects yourself, and you say to yourself, I'm not going to do that. Even in the real estate industry, do you know how many women consistently say, I don't know if I can do that, I have kids? I'm always like, so do I. I don't know if I can do that, I don't have the money. You thought I had the money the first day? Like, we create the pillows around ourselves to protect ourselves from actually breaking down brick walls. The issue is, if you are determined to do something, you have got to put yourself in an environment to do it. The issue is the women that don't stand up for themselves, that don't take that kind of executive action for themselves, are literally absorbing themselves in negative information. If you think about it, look at the algorithms that we're on. We're on social media all day. All of us are on it. And we will look at a dress on a perfect body and think that something is wrong with our body, get body dysmorphic issues. Everything triggers us. The thing is, it's a matter of, are you focused enough to not look around at all the distractions and stop worrying about what could happen and really put yourself in a dynamic situation where the only thing that you focus on is your success. I don't watch television. I do watch you though, Joya. I can't tell you the last time. If I'm not watching Squawk Box, or I do have a little bit of a fetish with the First 48. I like crime shows, but that's it. I limit the amount of interactions I have with other people who are doubtful, because I'm easily scarred by my own insecurities. So you just have to limit the amount of insecure talk you have around you. And sometimes that insecure discussion is from your family. So be very mindful that our mothers and our aunts and our, in my culture, we say tetes, all of the people around us, all of the older ladies are scarring us from believing in ourselves. You may have to start limiting those conversations.
I do a lot of shadow work with my mastermind, and I ask the question, whose voice is it right now that's speaking? Is it your voice? Is it your mother's voice? Is it your spouse's voice? Whose
Yes.
voice is it? And have you decided whose voice is actually coming through? I bet you haven't taken time to take inventory of that. And I always think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Your next point is why bragging matters to your success.
So you never stop bragging. I always think that men's accomplishments don't expire because they never stop talking about it. I don't watch a lot of sports. I'm a real, soccer fanatic, Premier League kind of person. But a lot of times when I watch sports commentary, I learn that these are the retired athletes of winning teams of the past, and they never stop sharing their scoreboards. The issue with us is we don't brag because we are worried about it sounding, going back to my first point, it sounds too arrogant, it sounds too boastful. We don't want to intimidate anyone else. But if you don't share it, how is anybody else going to know? I'll be honest with you. The new resume is called bragging. It is. Eventually, we're going to go out of the idea that we have to write this chronological resume with nice templates, and we're going to have to start bragging our way into rooms. As a real estate investor, if I don't actually brag my way into certain meetings, I don't get them. I don't have a resume. My resume is the building you see down the street. So I have to consistently say, I built that. I own that. I did that. I did that. I did. I have to remember me, start taking the we out, not we, not my company. I built that building on the corner of 5th and 8th. I developed those plans. That blueprint was done by me. I did that. So if I consistently brag, I get myself into bigger opportunities. We have to stop worrying about the expiration date, because your accomplishments do not expire until you stop talking about them. The moment you stop bragging, your accomplishments start to expire because you are worried about when you've accomplished them. I built buildings 10 years ago and I still drive by them. I was so proud when I did that one. Yes, that was great.
Yeah.
Yes, and I still do. It's not even mine anymore, but I still do it because I have to consistently be proud of what I've accomplished and share it with others so that I can get the next opportunity.
I read a great quote that your perfectionism is keeping you from being seen.
Yes.
A woman yesterday was telling me about how she has this show she wants to create and she just isn't creating it. And I said, your perfectionism is keeping you from being seen. At
Yes.
least get into the doing. As Debbie Millman once said, do 10 drafts. Do 10 drafts before you release the one that the world gets to see, but at least do something.
Do something. Yeah. That is so true. The thing is, if you don't do it, and if you don't get into a place where people can visually and know that you're so proud of it, they don't visually see it, you're going to get into a place where you're psychologically psyching yourself out and setting yourself up for failure. So that's the reason why I consistently brag in places where I know that my bragging is going to open the door to new opportunities. Otherwise, I will miss things. And so even yesterday, I'm in the middle of I'll be transparent. This is my first building ever sold. I'm under contract. I went there yesterday to be like, oh my gosh, I did it.
Yeah.
Even in this market, I did it. But I'm not because I'm proud, but because that now introduces me to a new market that I have been trying to tap into. So all it took is the first one. Now, my new accomplishment is I sold ... So I added that to my resume. Bragging is your new resume. Get ready to just brag your way into new accomplishments and new opportunities.
I'm reading a book called My Happy Pocket Full of Money by an author whose first name escapes me, but the last name is Gikandi. And he says that you need to have multiple goals. multiple goals, because once you achieve the one, the universe needs that sort of material in order for it to transpire all the rest of it. And
Yeah.
you sort of zapped up all your power if you don't have more than one goal written down on paper that you want to realize. So keep writing goals. The person that has 1,000 goals is going to be way more successful than someone that has one goal.
So true. So true.
The next point you have is how to start your own rumors at work and in business. Folks, if you're tuning in this conversation today, I'm in conversation with Carol Sankar, and we're talking about building confidence for women leaders. And we are going through her 6 points that she's established, but we are going to get to your questions. So please put them in the comment section. All right. So how to start your own rumors at work. This sounds salacious. This sounds wonderful. I want to hear everything what you have to say about this.
I actually have to credit Carla Harris with this a lot from Morgan Stanley. I remember the first time I saw her at an event in San Francisco, she said, when you start creating the rumor becomes true to those who hear it. So you want to start the rumor with somebody who's irrelevant and make that rumor go up to someone who's relevant. So in her example, she talks about Carla is a hard worker. Say it to the person next to you, and then that person says it to the person next to them, and it continues to reverberate. And then all of a sudden, the office starts ballooning and saying, Carla's a hard worker. I do the same thing in my own business. I'm a builder, right? Although by comparison to many of the men who are 30 years ahead of me, I'm 10 years in, I'm a builder. But they don't know that, okay, I haven't built the 50 unit yet. I'm close. I'm very, very close. This was a profound year for me. So I do this whole thing. 2023, I'm building my 50 unit. I haven't started yet, though. Got the land. Have not started yet. But it's the fact of starting the rumor now for future intention on bragging later. And it's not about it not being true. It is your possibility, the same way you journal. You have to allow people to now know who you are becoming. Otherwise, you'd miss the opportunity to become who you are about to become. You have to go there before you get there. So you have to start the rumors now about who you are becoming. Otherwise, you will not believe the things that you say about yourself. So I'm starting the rumor now that this land that I have bought out in the middle of the woods in South Carolina is what I'm becoming. I haven't started it yet, but it's not the matter of, I'm being transparent with you and our guests. I'm just saying that's just my moment of vulnerability, but it's there and I'm ready. And so if you don't start the rumors early enough, you won't introduce yourself intentionally to the people who are going to be your advocates, your supporters, your support systems, your allies. You'll miss them because now you haven't started the rumors that are going to allow people to want to invest in you, and not just financially, but invest their time into your success. So start it now and make it plain and let people start being attracted to you that way.
I think it was Michael Jordan, when he would be asked how many championships he'd won. If it was 2, he would hold up 3 fingers, because that was saying not only to himself, but to the world that the next one was already in the making.
Already on the way. Yeah. And that's what we have to start doing as women. We have to start being very intentional about what we're bragging about. Anything you want, you have to start talking about it in its infancy, but not the way you think. That, like, you don't have to share the plan. You have to share the intention. The intention is different than the plan. I don't believe in sharing all my plans, but you have to share the intention. I intend to build this building in South Carolina in 2023. That's my intention, because I already have the blueprint. So what we have to stop doing is allowing ourselves to negate how important it is to have people talking about us in different places. We have to have people kind of spreading the word for us at all times.
I ask my members to do something called a bullshit audit. And bullshit audit comes from Ryan Serhant, who wrote a book called Big Money Energy. But go around and ask people, 6 people you trust, not the yes people, but 6 people on your trust. What is the first impression that you make when you walk into the room? What is it that's, where's there a gap in your developmental abilities or your professionalism? Like, I think it's important to know what people are already saying so you can correct.
Yeah, because that's how you get to be an expert in something. And I've interviewed Ryan a few times before. And what I love about Ryan is he is okay with his failures. And he's so good at talking about his successes and talking about the successes of others. And I think that that's the reason why he's been so successful in real estate, is he does a great job of putting himself in the environments of sitting next to the people or sitting near to the people of where he wants to be. I would have never thought that when I interviewed him, I think like 3 years ago, that his firm would be exactly where it is today. I was like, wow. He said that in my interview. I remember interviewing him specifically, and he was doing his vlog at the time, and he said it. He was like, yeah, I've got something big. I'm going to do something in Soho. I've got something big coming. And I'm like, okay. Because he was creating his rumor in his vlog. And I don't think anybody saw what he was trying to do in his vlogs in the early days. Now he is a force to reckon with. And that's why we have to start those rumors.
I showed up 45 minutes early to meet my friends last week. So I grabbed a glass of wine right across the street from where his building now sits.
Yeah.
And I just sat and I admired it because I've read his book and I think about how he launched that idea during the pandemic at a time when everybody was in a panic and saying the world is,
coming to an end.
And I'm going to go crawl into a ball. He decided to start his own company.
And he's doing well at it. And I'm so proud of him. Super proud of him.
All right. The impact of verbal cues. What does this mean, Carol?
So I believe women use too many phrases, too many generic sentences, too many, in my book, I call them prepositional phrases. Because I'm not sure, but what if. We use a lot of prepositions in our vocabulary. And the one verbal cue that I think is probably the biggest verbal cue that your insecurities are showing up before your ability to do something is because. So I believe women don't need an explanation for anything. So I shared with you when we first started talking backstage that, I didn't intend to be home. This interview was supposed to take place someplace else. And I woke up this morning and a kid was just not doing well and I'm in mommy mode, right? But in the workplace, we don't have to be this vulnerable. I get to be vulnerable with you because I chose to be so. What our verbal cues do for us is we put everything out there. So I can't come to work because I can't come to work. That's it. We don't need an explanation for that, right? I can't make the meeting at 45 minutes. Not because I can't make the meeting in 45 minutes. Men are expected to say what they have to do and put a period at the end. We have this idea that we have to give an excuse, an understanding. We have to have an entire label full of prepositional phrases. Yeah, like what are we talking about? Like, I can't make the meeting, period. I can't come to the event, period. Not because I'm sick, not because the kids are, we share way too much information. And those verbal cues, what most women do not realize is it works against you, because the only thing people hear after I can't is whatever the verbal cue is. And because I used to be in Law Firm America, if you said kids, the first thing that they did on the partner list is put down, Carol has kids. So they know there's no partnership opportunity here because every 2 minutes, her 2 little kids get sick. So we can't even put her down on the leadership list, cross off. I can't make it because my car doesn't work. Oh, okay. Carol has old car. Verbal cues. You're setting yourself up. Has old car, does not know how to use Uber. I have no babysitter. Pen. She has no. It starts adding up, and before you know it, you want to sit in the C-suite, and somebody else has a notebook full of all of your because I's. Because I, not thinking how this is accumulating. And for those of you who have businesses, oh my gosh, this will backfire, because somebody will ask you, so how are your kids doing today? I remember they were sick yesterday. Remember, you missed a meeting, not because of the kids, but you just missed a meeting. Instead of saying, I couldn't make it, now someone says, I don't know if I'm going to invest in you. Because you have kids. Going back to the verbal cue, because you can't make meetings, because you're always late, because you have to leave early, because it starts coming back to you. So use your verbal cues. The moment you hear yourself getting ready to give that excuse or give that reasoning and overshare, stop. The word because is dangerous for us as women. My husband a lot of times can't make meetings. He never explains himself. He'll call, I'm not coming. Hang on. Perfect. That's it.
But so I've spent my career broadcasting from the floor of the stock exchange. Everybody around me was a dude. And I also work in television. We're getting shit done. And so short answers because I'm getting shit done. And I
Yeah.
remember when I started my women's leadership platform, a woman said to me, your answers are really, really short. And if I'm spending money with you, I would appreciate, the essence of the email was I would appreciate a more flowery email. And I remember thinking, what?
Yes.
And so my counterpoint to what you're just saying is, what happens when you're standing in the face of other women saying, well, I want a more flowery email, or I want a more flowery explanation?
Joy, I don't know if I can say that. Because I'd be worried that you would expect that from me, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't expect that from Tom. I gave
Mm-mm.
you everything you needed to know. And that's that. And in my politest and most humorous way, you had everything you needed to make that assessment. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be full of flowers for it to be effective. I gave you everything you needed to know. I don't have to explain what goes on in my home to be able to be effective for you. If my presence is enough. And what I think that we allow other women to do is to justify us having to explain things to them that they would not expect other men to do. And this goes back to the way we communicate. We communicate with way too many details because what? I'm not going to be there. I'm just not coming. And then for me, one of the things that has helped me to grow in the real estate industry is because I stay out of a lot of the lower level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people say, well, why didn't you come to that networking event last night? I just said no. I don't have to explain because it wasn't on my level. I just said no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we have to do is be very clear when we are rebutted with a can you give us more? You have everything you need. You had everything you need.
Before we leave this point, I'm thinking of a line from Sally Helgeson's book, How Women Rise. And she talks about Hillary Clinton's approval rating when she was Secretary of State, which was sky high. And then when she announced that she was running for president, her approval rating plummeted. Why? Because we do not like ambitious women. So I just want to talk about that point for a second, because if you're an ambitious woman who's laying down those boundaries, sometimes it's going to be other women that are going to be your harshest critics.
Yes. And it pains me to say that sometimes it's not just that they're your harshest critics. Sometimes that other women are your barrier to entry, because they will give you the kind of grief, and that's a nice word, to be able to make you feel as though you're underqualified because they're expecting something different from you. I also don't I think Hillary Clinton, and oh my gosh, I wrote a lot about her in an essay I just recently finished up, and I did talk about that. I talked about Hillary Clinton in 1996 in an essay, I haven't even published it yet, about how she went to the Women's Summit in China, in Beijing, and how it's almost as though she was trying in her best to appeal to more mothers and women at a time when her approval rating as the former governor, the governor's wife, the first lady of Arkansas, was in an all-time low, because back in 1988, I think it was, she made a comment about, I cannot say her name, Wynette, I don't believe in standing by my man or something like that. And she had tried to flip it in 1996 by stating that, I'm here for women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. And I said to myself, it's so interesting that we try to change who we are to fit people who we're trying to get approval from. Instead of trying to allow people to see us in our most organic state, we have to remold who we are to fit. And I always think that Hillary Clinton's loss really was because she spent so many years. One year you like me, the next year she was trying to not be organic for so long. This version of who she is now is who she always has been. But because likability has a lot to do with votes, she had to try to find a way to be likable. I think that what we have to do is be just who we're meant to be, and we will attract people with that. But it takes time because we're expected to, like you said, present it with flowers. And I think that she has done too much credibility damaging by trying to be who everybody wanted her to be instead of who she really was.
And know that a lot of people are threatened by that much greatness. They almost have to cut you down so they can stand in the same room with you. That's something that I've realized over time. Like when I've pulled off big things, people have cut it down, and I was hurt by it. But then I realized they couldn't suck the same oxygen in the room because it was too much to bear. And so, just really seeing people at their level of humanity, I think, is important, and have compassion for that.
Yeah, it's hard because at the end of the day, the problem then becomes it's 2020. We're about to go into 2023, and we're still talking about ambition and success when it comes to women. We're still doing that. We're still labeling women as assertive and aggressive for wanting more out of life. We're still, putting labels on women, and that must be very difficult. But I am not going to trade in ambition for complacency. I'm just not going to. That's not a trade I'm willing to make. I'm willing to trade in short hair for long hair, but I'm not willing to trade in ambition for complacency.
Your
Not going.
last point before we go to questions, becoming the leader you're meant to be.
This is where I mean unapologetically doing what the hell you want to do. Um, I spend a lot of my years apologizing for being different. I spent a lot of my years in the beginning days trying to mute who I was to fit everybody else's expectation. As a woman of color, I spent a lot of time saying, "Oh no, I'm just like you. I can do this," and I wasn't. And so, becoming the leader you're meant to be means be authentically who you're supposed to be. Do not redact yourself in rooms because you feel intimidated. That's actually the room you're supposed to feel most comfortable in. You to learn means you don't know the information you need to know. So that means you have to be a sponge and soak it up. When you're in places where you're comfortable or when you're in places where you're not growing, you feel it. So you have to know how to be the leader who you're meant to be unapologetic about it. I make no apologies for the fact that there's certain words I still can't pronounce. I make no apologies for the fact that I still have my British spelling with my favorite with the U in it. I make no apologies for the fact that you're always going to hear Soka in my timeline on social media. I make no apologies because this is the leader I've been meant to be. I spent too many years trying to be the leader that someone else expected me to be, and this is the leader that I have been meant to be. So be authentically yourself.
I had a question again because I'm not seeing too many questions here, ladies. You're better than this. Ask some questions, please. But I got a question from women in that law firm last week, which is, well, when is a time that you were dinged for being yourself? Surely there must have been one. And I know that they were coming from a place of, okay, you're in a different swim lane than me, so I'm going to take it in this context, but I'm not going to actually validate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, yeah, I mean, I remember being on television and being, audience members are probably the most scathing. You're out in the public view.
Wow.
People are talking about your boobs. They're talking about your hair. They're talking about your lips. And I remember going to my producer one day and being like, I'm going to show up every week and I'm going to bat 1,000, but I do not want any more of this audience feedback about my body. If you want me to do a good job, if you want me to do my best work, I'm not going to get it by listening to this, because they're on the other side. If you have so much time on your hands, you're going to write into a show about what the presenter is wearing. Like, what does that really say about you?
About you, yeah.
It is not my problem. Now, if you have something you have to say about my, performance or something like that, that's something I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And so that was my answer. I don't know if it landed well, but I'd say that to you. Have you ever been dinged for showing up yourself and it not being well received?
Oh my gosh. So about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I had to go to what we call tear downs. And so we had bought this building and I had not seen it, but I had a meeting right after that. So the dress was a little bit, because I'm dressed for the next event. I'm not dressed for this event because I don't intend on picking up a hammer, a nail, or anything like that. I'm just there to make sure that everything is going according to plan. And I'm an hour away from home. So I can't come back home and go to the next meeting. I'm dressed for meeting number 2. And I get there, and the decision maker is one of the code enforcement officers, and the way he
Assessed you?
I'm trying. I don't know how to explain it, but the way he got on me is this the way we show up to teardowns? This is is this the way we? I mean, I'm not asking you to show up in jeans and sneakers, but you look like you're trying to enchant the people who I have working for you. Is this the way you? Is this the way I what? And he kept doing it, and every time we would encounter each other, he'd say, well, it seems like things have changed. But he was much older. Here it goes. I'm in an industry where the average investor is 80 some odd years old. So I'm with a code enforcement agent who is in his 80s. And he's like, this is the way we show up. And mind you, he kept criticizing it until I got to a point where I snapped. I says, what would you prefer me to wear? Do you have a uniform in your car that would be better suited for this particular teardown that I'm not participating in? I'm here to view and sign. That's what I'm here for. Do you have anything else you want me to wear that's better suited for your team? Are they paying attention to all the assets I've got going on here? And he kind of like backed up. And I realized that I was being judged inappropriately for something that I was not there to be judged for. If this right hand is to sign a document and my eyes are to visually look at the thing that I'm not participating in, what does this have to do with that? This hand, these eyes. It has nothing to do with it. And he immediately kind of like backed down, because here's the thing, I'm in your space. It's too late. I'm in your space. I own this in your space. And you have to accept that my greatness doesn't need to be robed the way you need it to be robed for me to be in your space. And I don't owe you an explanation of what I have to do next. I owe you the respect of being here the way I was hired to be here. And that's it. I don't have to tell you.
And so in light of that conversation and that question, I published a note that I'd taken from Tara Moore's book called Playing Big, where she says that feedback is telling you about the priorities and the concerns of the other party. Very rarely is it about you. However, if this person is your target audience, which in this case this man was not, then you don't even need to integrate it. You don't even need to pay attention. But if it is about influencing the influencer, and this is the feedback that you're getting about how you are influencing the influencer, then you got to pay attention. Am I reaching my target audience? Which he was not your target audience that day.
Exactly. And a lot of times we take the ideas from people who are not our target audience and we change who we are to fit an audience that we're not even selling to. We're always all over the place with, is it this and is it that? And I think that that's where we do suffer with a lot of mental and body dysmorphic issues. We're looking at someone else's win that is not in our intention. So I'm not going to change who I am to fit someone else's intention. And that's why I don't really take feedback from everyone. I only take it from people who I assign to myself to be like.
Shannon Cohen asks, when you enter industry networking spaces and you are the only, how do you work those rooms and navigate relationship building?
Shake hands quickly. It's literally an impulse of just going up to someone and shaking a hand. I think sometimes what we do is we look at ourselves and we assess the room and say, oh, I'm the only. Remember, you're the qualified. You're not the only. You are the qualified, not the only. A lot of what my inner discussion has to be is I was meant to be here. And all the onlys that I'm thinking of is what I'm thinking people are looking at me for, not realizing that if you were invited to the room or you are in the room, you were meant to be there. So qualify yourself first. Get that out of your head. You got to qualify yourself first. Get that hand out, start talking. Because I think what we do is we look in and we do the posture, the shrugging of the shoulders, the leaning, that we start talking small. And then we have that baby giggle that we do. No. Shake hands, be yourself. And yes, you're going to sweat. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be scared, but you have to do it because if you are qualified to be in the room, you are in the room. Now you have to work the room.
I often advise women to be interesting to talk to, have something interesting to talk about, which is why we read magazines, which is why go experience life, go to this restaurant, go pick up that magazine that's completely outside of your swim lane. But it's so important for you to be able to do that. Oh, I've lost Carol. So I'll just keep talking. But, it's so important for you to become the person that needs to walk into that room and be the interesting one to talk to. There she is, Carol. I don't know what just happened there. We lost you, but I was saying that it's so important to be the person that you want to attract. I went to my class this morning, and this guy is super hot. He used to be a hockey player, but he always has this thing that he says that makes him so hot is that he's like, be phenomenal, attract phenomenal. And so I always tell women, like, you've got to be interesting to talk to without, and chuck that story that you have in your head that you're your only. Become interesting to talk to, and then all of a sudden people are having to engage you as well.
Yes, exactly. And stop talking about the weather and kids and marriage.
Yes. Nadine says, Carol, being my authentic self as a Black Caribbean woman sometimes is not received. Can you please share your support?
As a Black Caribbean woman, I think that we are worried more about how people perceive us. So I'm a Black Caribbean woman, and I don't care about what people are receiving. What I care about is the value I enter the room and give. So I can't worry about how people receive me. People have already made their determinations and their assessment of me long before I open my mouth. But my thing is, like Joya said, I have to be interesting enough to talk to. I have to be valuable enough to want to continue to carry a conversation. And I have to network with purpose. So being in the room and not being well received is kind of more self-inflicting, because I am just like you. I'm no different. And I carry myself in a way that I am the value. I am the asset. When I walk in the room, I am the value. And if you don't want to have a conversation with me, that's your loss. Move on to the next person. What we have to stop doing is thinking that the culture has anything to do with the relevance. It may be a conversation you're not having. It may be that you're not talking to the right person. It may be that you're bringing up the Caribbean stuff too soon. It may be that you are finding more interest in the things that are not important in the conversation. So being Black Caribbean, maybe you're talking too much about the culture. I don't even allow the culture to come up until way after you found my value, because I think that if I start with culture, you'll stay with culture. I want to start with value and end with culture. So you have to determine and kind of guide the conversation the way you want it to be guided.
And I always lead with the curiosity of a journalist. I ask a ton of questions. And if you're striving for questions, it can be right down to like, why'd you choose, like, I love your shirt. Where did you get that from? But showing curiosity about other people is a great way to engage them in conversation, because flattery will get you everywhere.
Exactly.
Bindia says, how do you balance bragging and bringing attention to your accomplishments while keeping the team spirits alive and not sounding arrogant?
The thing about not sounding arrogant, there's no way to define what arrogance is. Some people can handle confidence and some people can't. But your ability to brag is a necessity. So if they can't handle it, maybe they're not the decision maker. So it really wouldn't matter anyway if they are looking at you as being egotistical or arrogant. It's just a matter of, if you don't keep that rumor going on that you are the best at filling your own blank, if you don't consistently remind other people that you are valuable because you do blank, you will lose opportunities, because no one can see someone they can't see. So you have to consistently be relevant, but you cannot be worried about who thinks that your relevance and your ability to be proud of your accomplishments is egotistical. Because the thing is, you're going to lose opportunities because you're not doing the best job you can creating a resume that people have heard about a time and again. And the people who don't like it, I guarantee you they're not decision makers anyway.
And I would layer on top of that I think it's important to brace yourself that when you're playing big in that way, that you're going to be criticized.
Yes.
To expect anything less would be naive.
Yeah, you're supposed to be. And that will separate those who are going to give you support and guidance later versus those who are going to give you criticism that is not based on facts.
This next comment comes from Dio, and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. What does it look like to deal with mistakes well?
To not repeat them. So when you make a mistake, you don't have to tell someone you made a mistake. Learn from that mistake. The thing about us as women making mistakes, sometimes we publicize that we made that mistake. It is a mistake. It happens. Welcome to life, and welcome to your career. Things do happen, but you don't have to consistently highlight it. Learn from it and don't repeat it. And don't repeat it publicly. Try your best to make sure that you're doing the best that you can do to create some type of a learned experience from it. But sometimes, can I be honest? Sometimes we call something a mistake that's actually done for our good. Some things are not mistakes. They're done for our good. We need those things. As women, we expect perfection too soon. We need mistakes. We need to learn from scuffing our knees a few times. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of bruises on my legs from trying to prove that I can do something. And I needed that. I needed to be grounded because of that. And sometimes it's not mistakes. It's just a matter of, that's the lesson you needed to learn.
I think it's also important to get in front of the mistake. If you've already made it, to own it.
Yes.
That shows maturity as a leader. I made a mistake. But I think the often overlooked piece of making a mistake is stopping to reflect. Why did this happen for me, as opposed to why did this happen to me? And if you don't seek to process that, that's the gold. That's the real magic. And so that's what's going to be the difference between you making that mistake again, is that moment of reflection.
Exactly. Exactly.
Christina, I'm not sure where this comment came up in our conversation, but you say that it is difficult to do. So if anyone looks at any of the 6 pointers that you gave on building confidence today, Carol, and they say this is difficult to do, what is your response to that?
I say that you are underestimating your potential. I always try to give a little bit of my real story. I was born in a little island. I call it a raft at times, and the difficult part was that my mother had to make a decision that my grandparents were going to go first, my mother was going to go next, and if it wasn't for them coming here and not being able to speak the language properly, not knowing where to go in New York, dealing with winter for the first time, you make things difficult because you don't want to do them. And if it's a priority, you'll get it done. And that's not me giving you tough love. That means that you're creating a boundary and a barrier to entry that you really don't have to create. You don't really have to suffer. And that's really about you being hard on yourself and not realizing that whatever it is that you're saying is difficult to do is that one step that you just are scared to do. So think about it this way, from my standpoint, I think my mother's scariest thing was to leave her home country at her age and to leave me behind at her age. So what I'm saying is, if you think it's leaving your only kid in another country is hard, then anything I'm saying has to be easy after that, because I couldn't imagine leaving my kid anywhere. So anything is easy. It's a matter of determination, and everything that's new is always going to be difficult.
What if it's about rallying courage? Because I read Christina's question, and I think that it's rallying that inner courage that sometimes we don't have.
And also, I think it's also, if you're not around people who are courageous, who are your allies, who are cheerleaders, if you're not in rooms that say that this is possible or you don't see possibility, then of course everything looks difficult. Everything always looks difficult until you do it.
Mm.
Everything. And so you just have to be around a better selection of people too.
Shannon has maybe the last question that we're going to ask today, which is, what are 3 ways that you believe that female high achievers should actively be investing in their aspirations and ambitions?
Oh gosh, only Shannon would ask that kind of question. I know Shannon. um, there's a lot of layers to that. I think that, so let me give you my end of the year Q4 methodology. I eliminate myself from a lot of things around Thanksgiving until the first of the year. That is my reflection time. I write down a list of things I want to accomplish in the new year, and I look back in the previous year when I was writing down the goals for this year, and I check all the things that I did. Now, there's a possibility I'm going to carry over some things, and there's a possibility I'm not. But it's important for me to sit down in some alone time, nothing around me, because I have to know, what did I not do this year and why didn't I do it? So I take full accountability for anything that I have not accomplished, that I put on that goal list for 2022 that I didn't get accomplished. Because between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's no possibility I'm going to get it done, right? So I really want to be transparent with me. I want to be transparent with the people I didn't get to have a meeting with. I want to be transparent with the opportunities I didn't get a chance to have. I want to be transparent with me. And then, of course, there is the ambition. Did I put enough of myself into this thing? And then I have to write down the new set of goals and how I plan on getting it done. It's all about journaling, and it's all about making sure that you hold yourself accountable to every step within the journal. So whatever time you're going to need to get that done, you've got to be willing to invest the time into holding yourself accountable for what you need to do as a high achieving woman.
I'll layer on top of that, Shannon. I am unapologetic about the 5 people I surround myself with.
Wow.
I think that that is so important. I'm enrolling women right now for my mastermind for 2023, and that's effectively what I'm doing. I am putting you in a sandbox full of women who have the same level of ambition as you do, as opposed to the women that are around you that are judging you for being extra or judging you for bragging about what you've done well. How are you going to get to that next rung if people are already at your ankles pulling you down?
Yes.
So I think a big piece, Shannon, is about making sure that you're in the right circles, and those can be created for you. Sometimes you have to throw money at it, but for me, I'm always thinking about that. And then to your point about reflection, Carol, I don't think that we stop enough to reflect on what I did well last week, what didn't work, what did work, and what do I need to change? Those are the questions I ask myself every Sunday.
Yeah.
I think that if you don't think about those answers to those questions, you're never going to change and toggle for what's going to move the needle the next week.
Yes.
And I think that's a big piece of it.
Yes, exactly.
Santina says, thank you, Carol, for being you. It's always great to hear you speak on this and appreciate your insight and guidance. Carol, before we break here, if anyone wants to work with you or if anyone wants to have you speak or get in touch with you, is Carol Sankar, your website, the best way to get in touch with you?
That is always the best way to get in contact with me.
And
25 hours a day, 9 days a week.
And I will put up my website as well. As I said, I'm enrolling for my mastermind for 2023. And so my email and contact is at joyadas.com. Carol, I loved every single thing we talked about here. I hope that we stay in each other's experiences.
Yes, I surely hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.